Thank you. So we're missing Michael and Allison, I guess, eh?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll give them a minute.
Yeah. We should have made him stay on from the last meeting.
Here comes Councillor Morse. We're just waiting on Councillor Kale.
You might be having connection problems. We don't know for sure.
Here he comes.
Allison.
Okay, I think we're good to go now.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so this is the welcome everybody. Nice to see you all. Everybody's in place there. So this is the revised agenda for the regular council meeting of Monday, February the 14th. And as we open this meeting, we acknowledge with gratitude that we live and work in the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, whose people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Niqualaquam, Bowen Island for many millenniums. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and late items. Hope.
There are a couple late items that were circulated by email earlier today.
Yeah.
3.14, which is a report from the emergency program coordinator regarding a grant application.
Okay.
And then item 8.1, a revised recommendation. And that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Gary,
And
add an
sorry?
item if I could. I'd like to add an information item if I could, Gary, please. And this
absolutely, yeah.
with the connection between buses and BC ferries and the schools and some of the problems that students are having.
Okay, do you want to put that right in info items?
Sure.
Okay,
Can you email that to me, please?
Email it to you?
Is there like an attachment that goes with that?
No.
Okay.
Just be verbal.
Then can we hear from David or, oh, I guess that comes with the consent agenda, right?
Well, I think that's not an info item. I think that should go under new business because info items are just purely received for information.
Yeah.
So we could add it as 11 point, a new 11.6 and just shift the move to a closed.
okay,
Thanks.
that makes more sense. Thanks, Hope.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else have anything? If not, we will approve the agenda as amended by consensus, and we'll move on to public comments. Have you got anything there, Hope?
We do. We have two.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Starting with Nerys Poole regarding the Snug Cove wastewater treatment plant funding.
All right, Nerys Poole, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As Hope said, I'm speaking about the sewer treatment plant in Snug Cove and your resolution passed on January 31st. As you know, in that resolution, you voted to obtain $1.64 million for the upgrades from general sources of revenue, which is from all sources, all taxpayers of Bowen, which in my opinion is not only illegal, but also unfair. I urge you to reconsider this resolution. I have a lot of sympathy for the residents with building lots and building permits who are facing the prospect of not being able to build on a lot for which they had invested considerable money and where they believed they'd be hooked up to Snug Cove sewer. And I realized council was trying to fix a rather messy situation that could have resulted in a costly court case. Your resolution, however, is contrary to the Snug Cove sewer specific area bylaw, which clearly states that cost recovery for the sewer service in this area, and I quote, is to be recovered solely from the properties as defined, i.e. those in the Snug Cove sewer area. As a duly elected council, you do have a right to change any bylaw that you have, that you currently have, but you do not have a right to act contrary to the bylaw, which is what you have done in your resolution of January 31st. Until you change the bylaw, following the steps required to change a bylaw, including public consultation, you're not entitled to dip into funds that come from all Bowen taxpayers, unless possibly it could be a loan that would then be paid back, but that's for your consideration. Councillor Morse will remember in 2010, the council of the day resolved to obtain $721,000 from accumulated surplus, again, general revenue from all taxpayers, for this same sewer treatment plant. I was on council at that time and actually voted against the resolution for the same reasons that I'm stating tonight. The resolution, however, did pass. Councillor Morse at the time voted for it. In addition, though, council directed staff to engage a consultant to develop a program to recover the costs for the sewer plant upgrade, and I quote, from the lands that will benefit from the excess capacity. The intention of council in 2010 was very clear. The taxpayers on Bowen were not to be on the hook for what was only benefiting one area of the island, as was set out in the bylaw. I have asked staff to see the consultant's report that was mentioned in that resolution, but I have not yet received it or heard whether it even exists. One final point on this issue. In my opinion, your resolution goes against the bylaw and could therefore result in a legal challenge from those of us who pay for our own wastewater treatment on the island. Best estimate for a septic system on the island for an individual lot right now is roughly $40,000, a not insignificant amount. As someone who paid close to this amount a few years back for my own septic system, fairness would dictate that I not be expected to pay for a system that benefits the single-family residential lots of Snug Cove. This is not only what the bylaw states, it is a matter of fairness to all Bowen taxpayers. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you very much, Nerys. A lot of these issues have been resolved, and I think if you went to the municipal hall, you could probably get some answers for some of those issues that you're dealing with.
I guess my point is just about the resolution, that it currently still exists.
Yeah, I think we're aware of that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Hope.
Next, we have Tim Misko regarding the same motions from the January 31st meeting.
Okay, thank you. Tim Misko, go ahead.
Thanks for, again, the opportunity to speak, and further to my my letter to you. And much of what I'm going to say is very similar to Nerys's concern, and that was contained in my letter to you and sent to the undercurrent and published last week. First, I'd like to recognize the difficult position that Mayor and Council were in. I understand it completely, and I can also sympathize with the affected property owners who, have money invested, plans in place, and were suddenly put on hold. My discussion is not going to debate the actual need for the wastewater plant upgrade, though I understand there may be some questions in that regard as well. But I also understand that it too is being further investigated. So look forward to that, because that might provide the path forward for all with far less concern about cash. So with that said, again, I as well don't believe that increasing the capacity of the Snug Cove wastewater treatment plant is the financial responsibility of all taxpayers on the island. Bylaw number 10/2000, with most recent amendments occurring in 2019, establishes the Snug Cove sewer septic area and makes crystal clear the intent and financial responsibility in clause 2, where it states, and I quote, "The method of cost recovery for the service shall be by user fees and parcel taxes as defined by the bylaw, to be recovered," and this is the important part, "solely from the properties included in the area defined by Schedule A, the Snug Cove septic area." So during the January 31st special meeting, Liam Edwards justified the approach of using unappropriated surplus and capital renewal and replacement funds by pointing to the 2010 precedent where the upgrades to the Snug Cove wastewater system were funded through the unappropriated surplus. However, after reviewing the minutes of April 6, 2010, council where the upgrades were actually discussed, I draw your attention to the following motion, which passed by council. Quote, "That staff be authorized to engage a consultant to evaluate, recommend, and develop a program to recover the costs associated with expanded service capacity provided in the Snug Cove wastewater treatment plant upgrade from the lands that will benefit from the excess capacity." So referring to 2010 as a precedent that somehow gives authority to spend money as was proposed in the January 31st meeting is without grounds. There is no precedent to that. Also, during the January 31st special meeting, Councillor Hawking stated, quote, "that Snug Cove is more than a local service area because we all use the shops, restaurants, pub, and so on. So it seems reasonable that we, the Greater Island, should pay to some degree." I'm not arguing for or against that point, but what I would say is if council does indeed believe that this to be the case, the bylaw establishing the Snug Cove sewer specific area and its documented funding formula needs to be amended, including with an amendment is, of course, the proper public consultation, review, and then that bylaw amendment needs to be duly enacted. It's not a unilateral decision made by municipal staff or council. Doing so negates entirely the process of governance outlined in the community charter. Further, in response to my letter to Mayor and Council, Hope Dallas kindly provided me a copy of Liam Edwards' response to Brad Hawthorne, who raised similar concerns. And in it, Liam's letter, by the way, is attached below as part of the correspondence in item 12-18. In it, Liam quotes Part 7, Division 5, Section 210.3 of the community charter, which states, quote, "Nothing in this division restricts municipality from recovering part of the costs of a local service area by means of any other source of municipal revenue," end quote. He declares that in light of this clause, the proposed funding source, the unappropriated surplus and capital renewal and replacement funds, is appropriate and lawful. With due respect to Liam, I believe that this is a single clause that's been taken out of context and should not be used as a standalone authority to bypass a duly enacted bylaw. If that were indeed the purpose of this clause, so that it could be used at the discretion of municipal staff, mayor and council as a trump card to bypass duly enacted bylaws, it would pretty much render the entirety of Division 5 of the Community Charter and the process of setting up local service area bylaws, complete with their public input and all the petitions and all the process involved with it, as entirely meaningless. Council has the authority to lend funds to a local service area, as was the intent in 2010. I would again encourage you to look more deeply into this. That would be appropriate. Council referenced the need to review and establish latecomer fees as a possible source of revenue. Any resident building a new house outside the Snug Cove septic sewer specific area is well aware of and responsible for the $35,000 to $40,000 to design and install their septic system, not to mention the ongoing maintenance costs. It's difficult for me to understand why this wouldn't be a good place to start for latecomer connections to the Snug Cove septic system. And my last comment. Eagle Cliff residents faced with the costs of connection to the Cove Bay water system, or Tunstall Bay residents dealing with replacement storage tank costs, or any of the other water systems faced with major capital upgrades, as we're all covered by local service area bylaws, are surely looking forward to similar treatment and consideration should you decide to go that route. Anyway, I thank you for your time, and I do hope you guys will look at your past resolutions of January 31st, revisit them, and correct the errors. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Your points are well taken, and we'll look into some of those. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that they'd like a little bit of clarification on in the consent agenda? I've got Sue Ellen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if you can, I pulled 12.9 from the info items, just for a quick touch. Thank you.
Okay, 12.9.
The timber.
Yeah, got it there. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Allison? Allison?
You're muted.
Sorry,
That's better.
12.22.
12.22. Okay. Yeah, got it. And is that it? I don't see any more hands. So we'll say that that's it. And the recommendation is the council approve the items as outlined in the February 14th, 2022 consent agenda as amended, and we'll approve that by consensus, and we'll move right on to the corrections. And I'll go with Sue Ellen first at 12.9. Sue Ellen, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just to let people know that we should all be aware that the timber supply area for the Sunshine Coast is being reviewed. It's too late for us to respond. This letter came out December 13th or something, and the deadline is tomorrow. But it's about they're setting new annual allowable cuts. And I think we could have maybe made input regarding viewpoints from Mount Gardner, for example, that so many people come to, and that hiking and viewpoints has been identified as a business asset and wonderful recreation asset. Anyway, but they talk about a new framework for operational planning for logging, industrial logging. So I just want to flag that with everybody, something to keep an eye on. And that's all. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sue Ellen. And Allison, 12.2?
It's 12.22, 1222. It's the request from the Epilepsy Society for a proclamation of Purple Day.
Yes.
And I guess I don't see any harm in us doing that. Do we have a policy with respect to proclamations that I've not found, or smiling?
I'm smiling because not that I don't think they're great. It's just something that we used to do a lot of, and then we kind of stopped. Sophie has a great list of special awareness days that we do recognize, but it's hard to do all of them from a staff resource perspective. Just in terms of our communications and
Yeah.
but that's up to council. Just wanted to flag that we in the Adelar Council that we did a lot of proclamations, but and we didn't even have a dedicated communications staff back then. But just weary of our ability to keep up with all of them.
And
Oh,
our
just-
dedicated
Thank you, Hope.
our dedicated communication staff is not supposed to be full-time communications. So
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I don't understand how, there's one thing for a proclamation and then to post it on our website. What else is involved?
Well, it just depends on what level of awareness we want to give to each of these special awareness days. I'm not trying to sway council one way or another. I just wanted to give a little background in that Sophie is stretched really thin with the projects and day-to-day communications that we have already.
Okay, well, I guess I was just thinking, from personal experience as a teenager, having been out in the woods with somebody who didn't know they had epilepsy and they had their first epileptic fit. It's a scary situation. I just thought we would read the proclamation at a council meeting and that would be the end of it. But we were then indicating our support by doing that.
I think what Hope's saying is it's going to could open up the door to a flood of other proclamations. I understand you have personal interest in it there, but Maureen, you got something to add there?
I wonder if we could just get a little bit of feedback from the communications coordinator. This just feels a little too ad hoc. We've had quite a few requests in the information items in the past to declare a proclamation for various very worthy causes. But it just seems, as I said, a little too ad hoc to just pick up on this one and move forward with it.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Sophie has prepared a list that I think Liam has reviewed of special awareness days that the organization will recognize. And I'm happy to bring that forward and have Sophie comment on proclamations because we do regularly get them. And that's why they're just sort of slipped into information items and that we don't act on them just because it's for the reasons I've already mentioned.
Yeah, we don't usually see them though, do we? Do they all come on the information item thing?
Yep, they'll go on. If they're addressed to mayor and council, they go on information items.
Well, I guess to that point, there aren't too many of them then. Allison, you want to let this one go or do you want to pursue it?
You're muted, sorry.
You muted me again. You muted me. I didn't mute me.
Nope, I didn't.
Oh, okay. No, I would like to see the list of what days we're recognizing
Okay.
as special days.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Hope can make that happen for you. All right. Thank you, Allison. And we're going to go to delegations. Do we have anything, Hope?
No delegations this evening.
Okay, thank you. Business arising from the minutes, we have nothing there. Into bylaws. 7.1 is a rezoning application, RZ 01-2021, 815 Smith Road. Land use bylaw number 57, 2002, amendment bylaw number 564, 2022. Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development. All right, Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, Council. Let me start this. All right, so I'm here tonight with a rezoning application for 815 Smith Road. We've had a few discussions with this at the council level, so I know you're familiar with the application, but I'll just go over some of the high points and then the specifics for tonight. Okay, so 815 Smith Road is located on sort of the northern edge of Bowen Island off of Woods Road at the intersection of Smith Road and Fernie Road. Located in the RR3 zone, which permits detached dwelling and a number of other uses. And it allows accessory residential use, which is how we define secondary suites, both detached or attached. And it has a maximum floor area for detached secondary suites, which is 115 square meters. And the setbacks in the zone are 7.5 meters from all lot lines. So the application that is before you and has come before you in the past is to increase the maximum floor area of a detached secondary suite to 132 square meters to permit an existing detached secondary suite to obtain building permit and occupancy permit. And the application as well is to reduce the setbacks from lot lines for a detached secondary suite to 3 meters from the 7.5 meters. So this came before you at the January 24th meeting, and at that point, council directed staff to prepare a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw to allow for the redezoning application. And then council added with the condition that any replacement accessory residential use comply with the current land use bylaw. So council was okay conceptually with permitting that increase in floor area and decreased lot lines for the existing building, but wanting to ensure that any replacement would comply to current land use bylaw regulations. So staff have drafted bylaw 564 2022 to allow this existing detached secondary suite to meet our zoning regulations and obtain a building permit and an occupancy permit. And so that it would place the property into a zone variation. So it would be the RR3E zone variation, which would have two variations within it. So one would be to increase the permitted floor area of a detached secondary suite from 115 square meters to 132 square meters. And it would decrease the required minimum setback on the east property line for a detached secondary suite from 7.5 meters to 3 meters. So trying to do that narrow tailoring of the bylaw so that it's clear it's for the detached secondary suite, not for any other buildings or structures. And so then with as with our other zone variations, all other regulations specific to this zone would remain in effect. And then in consultation with our legal counsel, the chosen solution to make that council direction come into effect was to enter into a section 219 covenant with the applicant that would state that in the event that the existing detached secondary suite is destroyed, any replacement detached secondary suite would have to comply with the current land use bylaw regulations. And so that would be a condition of the rezoning, and we would enter into it following a potential third reading prior to adoption of the bylaw to help bring that, help fulfill that council motion. We have discussed with the applicant the covenant, and they are supportive of entering into the covenant. They haven't completed their full legal review of the covenant, so we may have suggested wording changes, but they're supportive of the concept of the covenant. And just other considerations that are listed in the report. So I brought this forward before, but as part of the process before a public hearing, we're asking for the applicant to do some of the work to demonstrate that a building permit can be obtained. So wanting to have comfort knowing that if this rezoning goes ahead, that the building can comply with the building code, that the sewerage requirements are in place, they can meet BC housing warranty requirements, and the applicant has begun that work and it is underway.
Great.
As we previously discussed, the applicant has offered an amenity contribution as part of the rezoning. And then finally, our development procedure bylaw outlines the need for an information meeting as part of the rezoning, and staff recommend that it not be required prior to the public hearing, given the small scale of the proposed development and sort of its existing state. So the recommendation from staff is that the bylaw be read a first time and that it be referred to the Advisory Planning Commission, the Housing Advisory Committee, Vancouver Coastal Health, and the Islands Trust. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. And I think that covers the changes that we were looking at in it. But we'll go to hands, and I've got one. Allison, go ahead.
You're on mute.
Why does it have to go to Vancouver Coastal Health?
That was seeking confirmation for the septic information.
Septic, yeah.
Okay, you don't get an independent septic. I didn't think Vancouver Coastal approved septics anymore.
They confirm that it's been filed with them, and so we would just be looking for that confirmation.
Oh, okay. All right, and then on the covenant, I'm assuming all the definitions that you've got, I didn't actually go and mirror them. The building, detached secondary suite, and floor area, they all match what's in the land use bylaw?
Yeah, so I mean, I got this draft on Thursday, and so I did note at that point that some of the like the floor area definition didn't match our bylaw, and I did change it so that it matches.
Okay, so what we've got in front of us is the land use bylaw definition or the draft from the lawyer.
Yeah. Is the land use bylaw definition.
Okay, and then I'm a little confused about detached secondary suite means a self-contained dwelling unit located within an accessory building that is secondary, incidental, and associated with the primary detached dwelling.
What's your question there, Alison?
Well, it looks to me like that's the definition of attached secondary suite, not a detached.
Oh,
Or have I got an old copy of the covenant?
No, that's the version of the covenant.
But we're talking about a detached secondary suite, not something that's
It's sorry,
within an
Councillor
accessory.
Morse. Yeah,
Oh,
within
okay,
an accessory
hang on.
building.
I'm okay. It says located within an accessory building. I missed accessory. Ignore that.
okay. Is that it, Alison?
Yeah, I guess. So being as this has been hanging around so long, how long is it going to take for the APC and the Housing Advisory Committee to turn this around? And the Islands Trust in the Islands Trust, I think it's 30 days. So can those two committees turn it around in the Islands Trust 30-day window?
I mean, I don't know when their next meetings are scheduled for, but they meet monthly.
Okay.
I'll just add that the Housing Advisory Committee meeting is coming up shortly.
That's good. Thank you, Maureen.
Thanks.
Okay, Alison, thank you. Anybody else have any comments on this? If not, I will move the recommendation as written and spoken by Daniel, if that's okay. In a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, David. And any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are unanimous. Thank you very much. Move that along a bit. 7.2 is council procedure amendments. Hope Dallas, corporate officer. Hope, over to you. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'll be brief, I hope. So before you, I have a staff report just outlining a few potential amendments to the council procedure bylaw in light of in light of amendments to the community charter to provide councils with the expanded authority to be able to hold regular and other meetings electronically. So it basically just expands on the section 7 that was already in the procedure bylaw, but includes definitions for electronic meeting, electronic participation, and hybrid meeting, and then goes on to provide sort of guidelines on how that's done and advance notice of how we'll do that, and then making sure that we have a space for members of the public to come and watch and hear the meetings. And then there's also under electronic participation at hybrid meetings. So when we do get back to a place where we are meeting in person, there's some parameters around how that will be done. So a member may not exercise the right to participate electronically more than 10 times per year, and no more than 3 members of council can participate at any one time electronically. So that's kind of the section that I would like comment on, just so that we don't have a place where we have 1 member of council in council chambers. So we want a quorum of council in person at the meeting. And then there's just one sort of housekeeping amendment that was missed when we redid the procedure bylaw that has to do with the inaugural council meeting. So the first regular meeting of council that must be held in the first 10 days of November following a general local election. So that was a quick read through. I will be bringing forward a bylaw that has the amendments in it, but just wanted to flag this for you and get any comments specifically on this section to do with hybrid meetings and how that might look when that time comes.
These are the rules coming out of Victoria, though, aren't they?
Yeah, and these are the
new amendments.
The amendments, yeah, but the guideline for the 3 members of council and the 10 times per per year. That's
Yes.
more of like a generally practiced, what is in kind of procedure bylaws that are coming from other municipalities.
Okay, so this is a draft then only at this point, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Okay, Sue Ellen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for this. Hope this is looking good. I have a couple of suggestions, and this is because I've been chairing meetings that, because the Islands Trust went back to in-person meetings, and then we had to go back to, with Omicron, we had to go back again to electronic meetings. So I just wanted to make a couple of suggestions. One of them is for 99.2B, that's the no less than 4 hours in advance of the meeting, you have to let Hope know. I wondered if we wanted to add the words without the approval of council. Because what I am anticipating is that one of us is over there in the ferry lineup in Horseshoe Bay and got overloaded, and they could be part of the meeting, but they didn't give you 4 hours notice. So at the beginning of the meeting, Gary could say, well, shall we let Sue Ellen join the meeting even though she didn't give 4 hours notice, and if the majority of council agreed. So that's my suggestion for that one, is without the approval of council be added, just like you've got it in the one above. And the same with C, because we had this happen at Trust Council, where the situation changed and suddenly we had all these people, not all these, but more than we expected, people saying, well, I guess I can't come because I care for an elder in a care home and I can't go in there after I've been to this meeting where people may not have been vaccinated and whatever. And so I just suggest you add it there as well, because that's what worked. We did have a quorum electronically, but it still worked. And we all had agreed to that. And the third thing is just a question. When the mayor or the chair of a committee or something gets cut off, do we have a policy about who chairs? Is it the vice chair that's on the month of?
Well, it would be the vice chair if in a committee setting. In council setting, it would be the acting mayor for that month that we're in.
That month, yeah.
And then if the acting mayor isn't present, then the council among its members chooses a presiding member to chair the meeting.
Good, as long as we've got because I've had that happen too.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's covered off in the procedure bylaw.
Right, I know we've had it happen too. Okay, thank you, that's it.
I like your two suggestions. I think that gives us the flexibility if needed.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Anybody else have any comments on those? I think it's a great idea, just to give us the flexibility. Thank you. Looks like everybody's happy there. Going to Rob and then Maureen and Allison.
Yeah, Hope, nothing specific about the policy in itself, but just a generalized opinion in the direction this is moving. And I get that everybody now, we're all over the place, in meeting, out meeting. We tried the double meeting once, wasn't great. I remembered some of the bugs in that. But I do hope like that this policy is meant to facilitate more discussion rather than having the discussion in different places at the same time, because quite frankly, like the meetings have not been nearly as effective the last 2 years than in our first year and a half, like significantly not better. And I think that really negatively impacts our decision-making ability, and even just me feeling not as connected to the other counselors because we don't see each other. We don't, have supper break with each other. Like, it's been a real drag. And there've been some decisions we've been making that I sometimes wonder, did we make the best decision? And part of it was that I didn't know where other counselors were coming at. We're sort of doing it on the fly in a meeting. So my hope is that it's used for situations like today where, Michael's out of town. He can now be in the meeting, which is great, so he's included. Are you in town, Michael, or are you out of town?
He's in Mexico.
I'm out of town just a
Good,
little
yeah,
bit.
sorry, yeah, it looks like you're back. Yeah, and like Sue Ellen brought up the point of somebody stuck in a ferry, that they can come in the meeting at the start. But my hope is that this doesn't turn into, oh, a bunch of counselors are, going to stay at home because that's now an option instead of coming together as a group, which I just think is very important. So that's just generalized comment about where this is moving, and hopefully we'll be in a normal place pretty soon, and this will all be sort of a non-issue, but who knows what's going on above us right now. It's all over the place. So that's it.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think that this is, yeah, I mean, ideally we want to be able to get to a place where we're back in a room and we have members of the public joining like the good old days. And in the instances where we need members to participate electronically, we want to have that flexibility. So that's where the three members at one time, but I like Sue Ellen's addition, and it gives us the flexibility for when we need it.
Yeah.
So thanks for your comments.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Rob. Maureen, and then Allison.
Thank you. Hope, my question has to do with 9.2C. The no more than 3 members of council at one time may participate electronically. And I've been looking and I haven't been able to find confirmation of what I'm looking for. Is there an overarching statement regarding quorum? So my point is, if 7 members of council, 2 are absent, okay, and 3 of them decide that they want to attend electronically, so there would be 2 members present and 3 members electronically. Is that a scenario that works?
2 members absent. Okay. Well, if we still have a quorum and council waives this more than 3 members participating electronically, then I don't think we'd have an issue. It was in our previous version of our procedure bylaw that we needed a quorum present at the meeting, but we took that language out when we had the pandemic. So I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay, but there still would be permission required. Is that correct?
No.
Well, if there's 2 council members that are absent for other reasons, then I mean, as long as we have a quorum to proceed, whether they're electronically participating or in person, then it's a non-issue.
Okay.
Is what I should have said earlier. I had to process what you were saying.
Yeah, I know. I was doing the same thing. Anyway, thank you for clarifying.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Liam, did I see your hand fly up there for a second? And did you have a comment? No? Okay, good.
It got resolved.
All right. Allison?
I think my questions partly got resolved. We've already got a section in the existing bylaws in 7.1 to have allow electronic participation. And I remember when we did that a couple of years ago, it was, a couple of years before the pandemic, I guess. It really helped enable people who, had difficult schedules to participate. So I'm glad. And some of those changes, those sections will be changed by 8.1. The quorum bit, I'm glad Maureen asked that question, because we did require under the old one that you had to have quorum physically present.
Yeah.
And then I'm glad to see that you put in the somewhere in here that people who attend electronically will be recorded as participating electronically, because I think that is interesting information. I thought our Zoom meetings were going quite well, and but partly I think because we had a year or so under our belts as meeting in person before that. I wouldn't want a whole brand new group of people to be jumping in with Zoom meetings. So I think this is a good compromise.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad at all. It even works in the car.
Get to see the ceiling of the car.
All right. So, sorry, Hope, go ahead.
I was just going to say the recommendation.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sue Ellen?
Thank you. I am I'm just checking here. Can we have this kind of meeting again? Regular all electronic. So
Yes.
when we set up the schedule at the beginning of the year, is it envisioned that they'll be set at that time?
The dates will be set. And then when we provide notice of each meeting, we need to indicate whether it'll be held electronically or hybrid or, yeah.
And who will decide? Because an all in electronic one is different for some of the councillors, as we've heard from Rob. And but there might be some meetings where it's better for whatever reason, including the pandemic blows up again. But and yet there might not be any provincial orders or changes in guidance yet. But who decides?
I think for now, like the public health orders dictate what we do in terms of gatherings and things like that. But for like the new council, for instance, and when things maybe are less intense, I think it would be the council that decides. So the council would need to pass a motion on how they want to do their meetings.
Okay.
In my mind, I feel like moving to hybrid would be the best way because it gives the flexibility of having in-person and electronic. Yeah, that's something we'll need to address.
Good.
And at a later date.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure that was all a possibility for a future council. Then I'd like to move that council direct staff to draft an amending bylaw to BIM's council procedure bylaw number 5.
Can I just ask a question? You raised a good point.
Mr. Mayor, do I still have the floor?
Go ahead, Sue Ellen, finish it up and then we'll second it and go to Allison.
Council procedure bylaw number 529/2020 as outlined in the corporate officer's staff report dated February 1st, 2022, and that council directs staff to proceed with issuing public notice as required under section 1243 of the community charter.
Okay, you're moving that. I'll second it. And over to Allison for further comments.
Well, I guess the question about who decides which format of the meeting is I think something that needs to be embedded in the procedure bylaw.
I think I'm under the impression that they're all going to be whatever way you want it to be. I can't see that that's going to be an issue. There might be somebody could be at the council chambers, and with our new system, the hybrid system, it depends on how many people we want to allow to come in electronically. But basically, you're either going to go to the council chamber, or you're going to come in electronically. I don't see that there's a huge issue here. I don't think so. Hope, what do you think? Is there?
I think that perhaps when we do the council meeting schedule in December for the following year, we indicate the preferred meeting method, and then subject to change, and then we give notice that, okay, actually we're going to have this meeting fully electronically because of whatever circumstance. But set a method and then change it as needed by way of notice.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big a deal. Allison, are you any happier?
Well, I'm okay if we set them all as hybrid, but if somebody's going to decide without any public health orders that it's going to be all electronic, then I'm not sure whether that's the right way to go, or we vote as a council on it, unless it's an emergency situation.
Actually, I think the point is moot because the charter does require that when we set our schedule annually that we have the date, time, and place of the meeting. So we're going to be required to do that anyways.
I hope it's not as confusing as it sounds. Okay, Maureen? Should be.
Just the point that at my place of employment, we went to the system that Hope was describing earlier, and it worked just fine. You specified whether it was in person or it was online, and then if circumstances changed, you adjusted it. And the decisions around which ones had to be in person had to do with the council being familiar with each other, but also in some instances on the topics that were likely to be on the agenda. So it's worked well, all I can say. And I trust Hope and the mayor and Liam exercise their judgment on this. The one additional point is that as a department, we were presented with a schedule and we voted on the schedule. And that's what we do as a council. We vote on the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Maureen. I think we're going to work our way through this really well eventually. And so any further discussion? Maureen, your hand's still up, but I think you're done. And so I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and that looks unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to move on to staff reports, and 8.1 is application for funding through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Environmental Quality Program for the Eagle Cliff and Cove Bay Water System Connections and Improvement Project. Patrick Graham, Director of Engineering. Hi, Patrick. Over to you.
So I will cut a short presentation. And we'll start here. So just a very abbreviated background, going back to 2020 and then extending into early 2021, looking into the options for Eagle Cliff water supply and the concept design and Class D cost estimates for the various options, in consultation with the Eagle Cliff and to some extent Cove Bay LACs, as well as council. The connection to the Cove Bay system was identified as the preferred approach, as opposed to developing the improvements that would be needed for Eagle Cliff to meet all of its needs as a standalone system. The biggest concern around that relating to the rehabilitation of the existing surface water reservoir. So there was an opportunity that we applied for, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant, the Rural Northern Communities Stream. We found out in, I think it was August or September 2021, that was unsuccessful. And followed up with the Eagle Cliff LAC and decided that we proceed with the preliminary design work and developing Class C cost estimates, both to advance the project and also to improve opportunities and chances for further grant funding. One of the comments when we had our debrief about the ICIP grant that wasn't successful is that they do prefer to have a more advanced design and Class C cost estimates. So that work has been mostly completed. There's now an opportunity to apply for, it's the same ICIP grant program it's the environmental quality stream, which is more the traditional stream for water and wastewater type of projects. Sorry, this is a little bit small. There would be a finished figure that would be included in the final draft of the or the final version of the pre-design report that was attached. This is just to provide an overview of the project. So the key element and the highest priority which we're calling phase one, would be the approximately 1.3 kilometers of new main connecting from Ocean View, Upper Ocean View at Jason Road to the south end of the Eagle Cliff water system. And that's really needed to essentially provide a reliable domestic supply that meets Canadian drinking water guidelines and would also enable the decommissioning of the existing surface water reservoir, which we'd prefer to do rather than investing in all the work that would be needed to meet provincial dam safety regulations and whatever risk management and rehabilitation work comes out of that. So that's about a little less than half of the overall project. And in our grant application, we're identifying clearly separate phases that could be done separately and in order of priority. And the hope there is that if we're not able to get the full amount for all project phases, that they would consider funding at least phase one. Phase two, the next component would be a new reservoir tank, much larger, in the order of 750 cubic meters. The current tank at the high zone site is about 160 cubic meters, and this would be for service to Eagle Cliff, as well as properties that join the system along the way, along the route of the new water main, and also the zone 3, the high zone of the Cove Bay water system. The phase 3A and 3B are, so I mean, that's needed for fire protection, as well as it improves the, the overall resiliency of the water system to have more treated water storage. Eagle Cliff currently doesn't have any treated water storage, and the high zone of Cove Bay has a limited amount. The next phases would be essentially to deliver adequate fire flows to the entire system. So that would require upgrading of the main from 150 to 250 on Eagle Cliff Road, as well as a connection from Scarborough, which would also provide the opportunity for additional properties to join the system, and also creates a looped system at the north end of the zone 3, and just reduces the amount of dead end water main and improves flushing, and operationally that's an advantage. So overall the costs would be 4.886. It's up to 73.3% is could be funded by the grant if it's successful, leaving 26.67% to be funded by the municipality, or the ultimately by the users, the benefiting properties. So there's a couple of requirements that relate to the reports that are included on the agenda here. The requirements for these grants have gotten more prescriptive. They used to say you just have to support the project and indicate that the municipality would provide the municipal share of the funding. They do require in this case first 3 readings of a loan authorization bylaw, which is attached, and that bylaw is assuming the entire. We obtain funding for the entire project, and that so it indicates the about 1.3 million of municipal share. If we were, in the situation where we were only successful in funding for phase 1, say that would be 609,000 municipal share. Debt financing costs would be borne by the benefiting properties. And I've got I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. And there would be a referendum or alternative approval process required before final reading and adoption, which, that would proceed once the outcome of the grant application is known. The other requirement that's specifically stated in the application is updated water conservation plan. That's been put forward as a separate report, so I can leave that. Got a couple of slides on that we can talk about next. So in terms of the loan, the debt financing. It's still to be confirmed exactly how many properties would be joining the system. So for the first phase, the new main, essentially the cost of that is shared by, Eagle Cliff and, whatever new properties are joining the system. The cost of the new reservoir is all of those users plus the high zone Cove Bay system users, which would also benefit from that infrastructure. Eagle Cliff main upgrade is an Eagle Cliff cost, and the Scarborough tie-in is again Eagle Cliff and new connections. This is to be confirmed, but just to give an idea of cost per property for Eagle Cliff, Cove Bay, high zone, and new properties joining the system. That's just assuming all of the project phases, all the project components go forward. So that's what we're looking for is council approval to apply for the grant and to provide first 3 readings of the loan authorization bylaw.
All right, thanks, Patrick. That's that's quite the project. All right. Okay, questions. I've got Sue Ellen and then Rob.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick. That's really helpful. And I took a screenshot of your sketch with the colored lines because I couldn't tell from those technical drawings what was going on. So this is great. Can you, I like what I heard about the loop so that you'd have more options for the water to circulate. Could you show me where that loop is? Because I don't see the connection.
Okay. So right now there's this line, this green line here doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 150 main up to this point. And then this is a smaller main that extends up to Creek Road, serving properties up here. So initially, the key piece is to connect the system. And that would just be one line here. This would create a loop here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The system. You still have you still have the challenges related to flushing, longer mains, which is common in our systems. It just improves the situation somewhat.
Thank you. I think I just didn't see the little line through the road there that up to the phase 2 new reservoir tank and down, right? That's the loop?
No, this, so essentially this green, the green and the south end of the blue form a loop.
Okay. Right. Okay, that's fine. Yep. Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue Ellen. Rob?
Yeah, thanks for that report, Patrick. I'll be supporting it. I mean, this is great that, the property owners there, basically 73% will come from a grant funding. So I think that's a big, that's a huge bonus to upgrading that system and not having all the water users pour the full cost. The breakdown of the cost to the users, is that going to be a one-time payment or is that going to be stretched out over time? And I'm also wondering if we don't get the full funding, obviously the users are going to have to pay a bit more. How does that work with you mentioned a bit about a referendum. Just explain a bit how that would work for us.
Well, the details of the financing, like what duration of loan and what the interest rates are at that time, would be to be determined. I assume it would be at least a 5-year loan, but probably longer if there's higher costs involved. We recently did a 5-year loan for the Tunstall Bay Reservoir, and that was there were some users in that system that were saying they would prefer lower payments over a longer time period. So that would have to be a discussion with the Eagle Cliff LAC and community, as well as the other benefiting properties in the ones that are interested in joining the system, and the north end of the Cove Bay system. So yeah, I guess the approval process, if it's a longer term, yeah, whether it can be an alternative approval or if it has to be a referendum, I guess depends on the details of the financing.
Yeah, I think if I can add in, we can make that decision at a later date. And it, so far there's been quite a strong agreement and support from the Eagle Cliff local area committee. And so, we can choose to go for an AAP, alternative approval process, if we feel there's great confidence in the project, and or move to a referendum if we felt that was a better approach. We would probably promote longer term borrowing, and the opportunity for one-time payment could be there for individuals if they were to choose to do that.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Liam. Is that it, Rob?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And David?
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Patrick. Good report, and I support it. The only thing I didn't quite understand is, I think it was your penultimate slide, might have been your last slide. So the costs for a new user were less than the costs for someone already in Eagle Cliff. So I didn't quite grasp why that was the case. 5,000 versus 7, something like that.
And again, this is still to be confirmed. We don't have agreement from everybody involved what the cost sharing arrangement would be. This is I'll just go back to this now to so essentially you've got a piece of this project that is essentially upgrading the main along Eagle Cliff Road, about 800 meters of main in the existing system. And so I've assumed that would be a cost to the Eagle Cliff system. And so that's, whereas the new mains would be a shared cost between all the benefiting users. That made sense to me. We haven't, like I said, we haven't reviewed this with the LACs and gotten everybody's agreement on how this cost sharing formula would work.
Okay. Okay, I'm still not quite understanding it, but that'll all go through the LAC, and that's their issue to address. Okay, thanks.
So if I might try, the cost to service the whole Eagle Cliff community is greater than those 45 properties that are in Scarborough.
Oh, okay. Now I understand it, because it's a longer pipe that has to be right. Okay.
Right.
I just and new, like some of the new properties could be down.
They're right there.
They're
all
right there. Okay.
There's an interesting spot near Creek Road where there's like one house served and a bunch right beside it that are not, and things like that. So, but Patrick's right. We still have a lot of work to do with the local area committees to iron those.
Thanks
details.
very much. I'm in support. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Maureen?
Thanks, Mayor Andrew, and thank you, Patrick, for your report. And I just want to confirm a couple of things, make sure that I completely grasp this. And a lot of the discussion that we've been having around the wastewater treatment plant has had to do with whether the users in the local service area should be paying the costs, or whether the approach that we have chosen to take is appropriate. So that's sort of the background. So with this project being put before council, the local service area folks are the benefiting users, are the people in Eagle Cliff and the people in Scarborough.
Mhm.
Okay, and if we look at the big picture and we're successful in securing the grant, then the municipality will have secured on behalf of those users roughly, what is it, 73%, something like that, 75% of the costs. And the local service users, the benefiting users, will be paying roughly 25% of the cost. Is that accurate?
Well, if it's successful, the grant, so the fund, the provincial and federal government would be paying 73%, and then 27% would be paid by, yes, Eagle Cliff and the new properties joining.
Right. So my point is that there are projects that are being undertaken on Bowen Island where the benefiting users are not covering the entirety of the costs, in part because of the activity of municipal staff in securing grant funding to support those projects. And I think that that's a really important point to keep in mind. But it also would raise the question, and it's in the documentation. I just would like it said in the council meeting. Why is this project being chosen rather than some other local service area for improvement of its water supply?
Well, the main reason is that it's our best chance of success. It's the project that ticks the most boxes in terms of essentially providing a level of service that many properties on the island should have and don't, in terms of access to reliable source of clean water. There's needs, substantial needs in other water systems. In the blue water system, there's substantial needs. And if we were further advanced in the consultation with those communities and the planning and design for system improvements, that project, or a project there, might make sense to apply for a future grant opportunity. But at this time, it's one of the biggest needs on the island, and it's the best chance for success.
Can I add on to that a little bit? I think it's a really good question, Councillor Nicholson. And I mean, so we have in the last year and a half or so implemented a new approach to grant funding, where anytime there's grant funding opportunities, we bring together the relevant departments and sometimes even external agencies from the municipality, like Tourism Bowen or others, to discuss what the best opportunities are for those grant opportunities, and to ensure that we're not competing against each other. And to Patrick's point, there are some projects that just would not fare well at all, and or not be eligible. And so we're always trying to put our best projects forward, and this one is definitely the best fit for this program. And you raise a good point that it is of a great benefit to the local area.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Maureen. Allison?
I just wanted to clarify that cost doesn't include interest and everything. So people are watching. It's going to be more than $8,000 per property when you factor in the financing costs.
Would that be accurate?
Yeah. That was sort of done quickly. without really all of the details of what the interest rates would be and what the time frame of the grant repayment would be. But yeah, that would all have to be factored in. So yeah, the costs would be more than what the slide showed.
Yeah. Right.
And I also want to just talk a little bit about timing too, because this grant program moves slowly in comparison to others. And so it is in the report, but I just wanted to make sure it's understood that we don't anticipate hearing back about, if we do apply, we don't anticipate hearing back until fall or winter at the earliest. And so, you know, if we are successful, we would then be coming back to council to advance the project through a procurement process and then start advancing towards a elector approval process for the borrowing as well. And we'll have many more details and all of those details sorted out by that time.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Michael, did you have your hand up or? No, okay, fine. Yeah, just Patrick, just a quick question there. I know you put out a survey to see if anybody was interested in joining up on that water system. That was a while ago now. What kind of return did you get on that?
I think we sent the question to quite a few, 120 or more properties. I think we only got responses from about 30.
Okay.
And there was about 15 that had indicated they were interested. That was based on what we put out there was, I think we said it was like a $30,000 cost, not assuming a grant, was available.
Okay. Well, that would change considerably, wouldn't it?
I think
so that cost, if you got a whole bunch of people that were going to sign on the early stages there before it got to Eagle Cliff, that would theoretically reduce the cost of the Eagle Cliff.
Yeah. It would be shared amongst greater numbers. And so there was at least 15 properties or something like that who would pay sort of the full amount for water. A number of those were on the Ocean View Road section where there was already a prior petition that we talked about previously where they were trying to get the neighborhood together to extend the system.
Yeah. Cool. Allison, quickly, and then we'll move on.
Well, I just wanted to say, I think that cost that we told everybody in the league also included the fee for the expansion of the service area policy. So it was the cost plus paying to have the service area expanded.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that too, yeah. Okay, thanks, Allison. So the recommendation is that council direct staff to apply for funding through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Environmental Quality, the ICIP-EQ, for the Eagle Cliff and Cove Bay Water System Connection Improvement Project. And that bylaw number 565, 2022, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Loan Authorization, Cove Bay and Eagle Cliff Water Systems Connection and Upgrade. Bylaw number 565, 2022 be read a first, second, and third time. I will move that.
Sorry, Gary, there was an addition to that motion from the on table in the last pieces that council commit to undertake an elector approval process to authorize the borrowing.
That's right.
Of the required funds should the grant funding be approved.
Okay. Thank you, Allison. And any further discussions? Sue Ellen, I see your hand up, or were you that reference to that?
That's what it was about. Thank you. No, I'm in support.
Then I will ask a question. All in favor? Aye. Terrific. That's fantastic. Good luck with that. And we'll move on to 8.2, which is a water conservation plan update. Patrick Graham, thank you.
Okay. So this is another one of the requirements of the grant program that we've just discussed is a updated or a water conservation plan updated within 5 years and endorsed by council. So we don't have an official sort of updated plan document. We've done, there's been a number of efforts since the Cove Bay water conservation plan was developed back in 2011. And we did get a plan update in a tech memo form, essentially identifying what's been achieved and what, more importantly, what the next steps are. So I'll just go back to the presentation we were looking at earlier. There was a comprehensive conservation plan for Cove Bay water developed back in 2011. In 2016, there was formal endorsement of the GVRD water shortage response plan, essentially the step approach to water conservation restrictions that are applied depending on the level of shortage seen in the water systems. There was a progressive rate structure developed for one of the water systems in Tunstall Bay, 2017. And something we discussed previously, that in 2020 there was sustainability assessments for key water sources on the island, Grafton Lake in particular, but also the aquifer on the west side of the island, where a number of water systems obtain their supply from. And then just recently and attached to this report was the water conservation plan update and recommended next steps. So there has been.
Oh, I lost you.
I just froze there.
Yeah.
Maybe I can carry on as best as possible. Yeah, I don't have access to his presentation, but essentially there has been ongoing education, leak detection and repair, as well as communication about water conservation. And the last bullet speaks to the general decline in household use. And Bowen is already considered to be a water wise community, and the average consumption by household is lower than both the provincial average and the regional average, and so we're pretty good, but there's still room to go and room to improve there, and so one of the things that we're looking for tonight is council's endorsement to be earnest about taking the next steps in their water conservation development. And I believe that council and the community is quite conscientious about water conservation already, but this will also help show that commitment to the province that it is something that we take very seriously.
Yeah, and we're trying hard. Those numbers are quite impressive, actually, for the public use of the water. David, do you want to go ahead, and we'll have a conversation here while we see if Patrick's going to get back.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, so Liam, I'll try asking the question with you, but this is all great. Of the 5, the A, B, C, D, E parts of the recommendation, it's the E one, which is review the subdivision and development servicing bylaw to determine demand management requirements that should be applied to future development. I'm not sure exactly, but one of the things, what that includes, but one of the things that was recommended in the urban systems report was that all future construction include rainwater capture as a non-potable outdoor supply. Would that be included in that idea that all future construction include rainwater capture?
Yeah, to the extent feasible. Like, that may or may not be reasonable for some types of development, but yeah. I know in some of the CD zones, that's already a requirement. where you have rainwater catchment and no use of potable water for outdoor uses.
Right.
And so that's something that we could expand across the island.
Okay, good. Thanks, Liam. That was my question. I'm
Okay,
supportive of the
Allison?
rest of it. Yeah.
Thanks, David. Allison?
Oh, just following up on David's comment, but it wasn't what I was going to say. I don't think we can mandate that for existing lots because of the building code. We can't mandate something tighter. It would be nice if the building code, you know, was amended to let us do that. But we've done a lot of covenants on previous developments where people pervious surfaces and rainwater catchment. I guess my question had to do with, this is the last one we did, we had to do because we were applying for the grant for the Cove Bay water treatment plant. And we had to have a water conservation plan as part of that grant application, which is my understanding with this grant application as well. We have to have a water conservation plan that's updated. But are we going to, what's the timeline for getting it? Are we going to be able to get this done for the whole of island, for all the systems versus just dealing with Cove Bay and Eagle Cliff? Because
So,
of the
so
grant?
you're right, Councillor Morris. The previous grant to the Small Community Fund for Cove Bay Water did require a council endorsed water conservation plan. However, they want to see that plan updated ideally every 5 years.
Yeah.
And this one is outdated beyond that. So that's why we're looking for more direction from council now. And you know, I would think that we could do a lot of work on water conservation across the island before this project would be, you know, or the outcome of the grant would be announced, and or before the project was completed. But it's not, you know, Bowen is is unique, yes, as are all municipalities, but unique in that we have these 7 individual water systems. So, you know, a lot of municipalities are dealing with one system, and so it's a bit simpler. So, but we would want to see this type of work propagated across all systems.
Yeah, so I'm not worrying about that part. I guess my concern is that we've got, say, from now till the fall to get this plan updated.
No,
And,
oh, sorry,
because
carry on.
If we don't have an updated plan, where the grant hinges on having an updated plan or not?
For submission of the application, they want to see a council endorsement of water conservation initiatives. So we're looking for council endorsement tonight to include in the application that's due February 23rd.
So we don't have to have the update done by the time as a condition of getting the approval in the fall?
No.
Okay, because
No.
that was my concern, that doing it just for updating the Cove Bay one and adding in Eagle Cliff would be a hell of a lot easier to do
Yes,
than
I
doing
agree.
it for all 7 systems.
Yeah. No, and I do think Cove Bay system is a prime example and an area that we might want to focus on for some elements, especially like the rate structures. So that might be something that we tackle first. But what we're asking for tonight is quite a comprehensive endorsement from council to approach an island-wide update.
For the municipal system.
For all municipal systems, and we need that endorsement as part of our application for the February 23rd deadline.
Well, my question was more for the timeline as to when we had to have it done by.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Allison. And Sue Ellen?
Thank you, everybody, and welcome back, Patrick. I have some of my questions have been answered, but I wanted to flag with you. You've got you specify some of the things you want to update. So I've including recalibrate your D there about the 6-week drought period in summer 2021, and I was wondering whether you would also include 2015 summer, because it's my understanding that that was even drier, but it had not been included in the historical data that had been used in the plan for the water treatment plant. So I just wanted to but maybe you don't have measurements for that?
We can certainly look at that. My understanding is that when the Grafton Lake sustainability assessment was and modeling was undertaken, in 2020, that all of the available prior data was built into that. But we would
Okay.
certainly
If you
confirm
could,
that.
if you can confirm the 2015, because I had the impression that it was before that, and but maybe there's been more work done since. And I thought other things that you might want to mention that could be included in this update are things like the climate projections from Metro Vancouver and from the CRD. And I'm mentioning the CRD because the longer, drier summers as they relate to islands or, really limited watersheds is something that you see in the Capital Regional District's climate projections because they have a bunch of Gulf Islands in them. And also, you may want to mention, depending on the budget decisions that Trust Council comes to next month, there's groundwater recharge potential mapping for Bowen is in that budget. So as long as it stays in there, that's something that will be coming by Christmas kind of thing. So those are just some ideas. Otherwise, I'm in support, and I think I think everybody will be, citizens like water conservation, and as we get into climate future, and especially with all of our well users, we all need to know about these things. And I support the idea of a water conservation plan. I didn't realize it was for only muni systems, but that makes sense. That's what we've got data for. Is that correct?
Well, ideally, we would like to have a comprehensive island-wide water master plan. That's something that you recall, we made some efforts to advance, and council did support. There was a sense with a number of the water system LACs that there were higher priorities to focus on rather than advancing the planning work. But we have done a number of components of what would ultimately go into a water master plan, and certainly water conservation plans and implementation of those plans is part of that. Looking at the progressive, the rate structures for all the municipal systems, expanding education efforts, updating our source water sustainability assessments based on current data. And then the other thing that was mentioned is looking at what demand management requirements might be appropriate for future development. So those are all things that relate to the whole island. The focus has been on the Cove Bay system and Grafton Lake, and that's the most relevant to this, obviously, to this project.
Right. Okay, thank you. So maybe there's things left for future updates and future grants. But that's great. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make those few suggestions, but otherwise I'm in favor and happy to move the motion whenever it's ready.
Go ahead, Sue.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a long one. Shall I read it all?
If you choose to.
That council endorse and direct staff to proceed with the recommended next steps in updating and implementing the water conservation plan, including review the effectiveness of the progressive rate structure for the Tunstall Bay water system that was implemented in 2017, develop and adopt progressive rate structures that encourage conservation in all municipal water systems in consultation with each of the local water system local advisory committees, expand water conservation information provided with water billing to include individual property metered consumption relative to other users and conservation targets, recalibrate and update the Grafton Lake water model and future growth projections based on data from the 6-week drought period in summer 2021, review the subdivision and development servicing bylaw to determine demand management requirements that should be applied to future development.
Thank you. I'll second that. And any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
In favor.
All right, we got everybody. Thank you very much. We'll move on to correspondence, and this is a letter of thanks and request for continued partnership neighborhood small grants program. It's got Holly Graff on it, but I don't see Holly there.
No, she's not at the meeting.
Okay.
But I think Liam or I could speak to it.
Sure. I can read the recommendation. That'll probably tell you a lot about what's in here.
Yeah.
Whereas Bowen Island Municipality has received a request from the Bowen Island Community Foundation, the foundation, for continued partnership with Bowen Island Municipality, BIM, to act as a community charitable partner to receive and disperse grant funds on behalf of the foundation for its neighborhoods small grants fund program for the year 2022. And whereas the municipality continues to support the work of the foundation in providing grant funding for neighborhoods, so to share skills and resources, forming relationships that build resilience and self-sufficiency in local communities. Therefore, it be resolved that the municipality enter into an extended memorandum of understanding to act as a community charitable partner for the receipt of grant funds from the Bowen Island Community Foundation and the Vancouver Foundation, and disperse the grant funds based on recommendations from Neighborhood Grants Committee. And further, it be resolved that council support the program by providing matching funding in the amount of $1,500 to be included in the 2022 budget. I'll move that.
Second that, Gary.
Thank you. I'll take Michael on that one. And I don't think we need much discussion, but go ahead, either Liam or Hope. And you got a question, Sue Ellen? Yeah, I see one.
Yeah, thank you. I understand from the report from the letter that this has to do with pandemic and neighborhood resilience and getting people together and that kind of thing. Can somebody say a few more words about that? Because that wasn't included in the recommendation, and just to let people know where's this coming from, and is it only going to be for 2022, or do you see it going further?
Well, I can just jump in and say that we've done it for 2020 and 2021. And this will be our third year partnering and providing funding. I can pull up the memorandum of understanding, but I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have a ton of detail, but
it's okay. There's more in the letter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the MOU was attached to the to the agenda item too.
Right, Maureen?
Yeah, my question is, how long is the extension? Is this just a 1-year extension of the MOU?
Just a 1 year.
Yeah.
1 year. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, since there's no further discussion, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, I've got everybody. Thank you very much. That's very worthwhile. And reports of committees, and commissions, Councillor Fast, 3 minutes of the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee meeting held January the 18th, 2022.
Well, thank you.
This and the PTECAC 2022 work plan.
That's right. This is the this is just the minutes are there, and this is the work plan that was composed with the advice of Bonny Brokenshire's staff person, Bonny Brokenshire, for the with the committee. And as you see, there's a bunch of volunteer work involved in it in terms of writing and education and doing some things along in the parks and trails outdoors. And it's all related to the parks plan recommendations, and as well as anything that is referred to them by council. So the plan is there, and that's our work plan for endorsement.
All right, go to Maureen. Thanks, Ellen.
Sorry, I should have taken my hand down. I don't have a comment.
Okay, Allison.
Yeah, I'm looking on the second page. And sort of the very bottom of the first page of the work plan talks about recommendation 1.4.2. And then there's a solid black line. And then you've got something called beaches. And you've got a bullet there. And it says develop information for coastal zone awareness, conduct assessments and provide recommendations regarding ecosystem health and monitoring in light of the declared climate emergency and in keeping with the intent of the parks plan. And then it says recommendation 1.4.2. So is that bullet in the wrong place? Should it be up above with recommendation 1.4.2? That's my first question.
Sure looks that way, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because the other recommendation that's beside in the two is talking about opportunities for accessing beaches or experiencing the island's beaches. So is it in the right place? And the second question is, what's a coastal zone? I didn't think we had one. And
If I'll turn those questions over to Bonnie Brokenshire.
Hi,
and then the
Bonnie.
third question was, what does conduct assessments mean and how are you going to do that?
Sure. Thanks, Councillor Morse. So I believe that point could be put up in the previous. However, it is referring to recommendations 3.1.2 and 3.1.3, but it also is tied in and does sort of correlate with recommendation 1.4.2. So, you know, it's kind of tied to it. It's hard to categorize things when they have overlapping bits to them. So I believe it's in the right place. It does reference the previous recommendation, but I think it's okay under beaches.
Well, it
could be moved as
conducting
well.
assessments and providing recommendations regarding ecosystem health. It has nothing to do with providing opportunities for residents.
Well, that goes into your second question there. So really what it is it's assessing coastal zone, and I'm totally open to changing that because you are correct. We don't have a coastal zone. So maybe better said, as I did allude to in an email today, what I did say is that we're really referring to the back shore and the foreshore, or the shoreline, a general term. And really what it's looking at is it's to ensure public's ability to reach shorelines by way of public beach access points, and to ensure that those points remain viable, not only with physical access, but also making sure that the beaches themselves remain healthy with beach nourishment, etc., due to climate change and coastal squeeze. So it's a bit complex, and we tried to simplify it as per the discussion at the committee table. I don't know if that answered your question.
When you're talking about beaches, are you talking about everything below high tide?
Yeah,
So,
that would be safe to say.
So when you're conducting assessments, you're going to go down a public beach access and you're going to walk along the beach.
Yeah, for example, we've already engaged, we have some experts on our Parks and Trails committee, and we've engaged one of the community members. He's a coastal geomorphologist. Tunstall Bay was hit hard with the king tides and storm surges. So we're looking at fixing that and maintaining the access for the public, but also making sure that the beach remains healthy through nourishment. So coastal processes are very complex. So we're trying to simplify that item as much as we could.
Okay, so I would suggest you say develop information for beach awareness. And that implies that it's clearly below high tide.
Thank you. And I'll just add, in case people are wondering what beach nourishment is, that means some places the sand and gravel gets taken away. And if there's not more sand and gravel being eroded from nearby headlands and uphill, the beaches can lose their sand and gravel and become rocky, as well as steeper because of erosion and different problems like logs piling up or getting taken away. Anyway, that's by the by. Any other questions?
Maureen?
Thank you. Just one suggestion and two questions. There's a reference here to the Grafton Lake Nature Reserve, and I think we should get in the habit of referring to it by the name that it's supposed to have, the Art Renaissance Nature Reserve, rather than Grafton Lake. There's one reference to costs being covered through contributions to the Maggie Cummings Fund, but I didn't see any other costing information for some of what you're proposing here, Bonnie. Could you say a bit about that?
So I don't believe there'll be any budget implications, if that's what you're asking, Councillor Nicholson. Any of the educational materials and such would be more through our communication dissemination network. And so I didn't anticipate any other budgetary allotments specifically for our work plan.
Okay. And then finally, the mention of developing a plan for the new Veterans Park. Could you say a little bit more about what that entails?
Yeah, it's sort of a carryover. It's sort of been there for quite a while, but it wasn't something that was identified in the parks plan. So really, I think we're just going to start. The poles are still there from the logger sports, and maybe look at some. We've been talking about it. It's sort of a carryover from last year. Maybe some bat boxes up there. Look at maybe bat and swallow boxes that maybe involve the nature club in that. Possibly pollinator gardens. I don't think that's all going to get done this year, but I think we could look at the bat boxes or swallow boxes, the installation of those in that area. It's a nice open area. It sort of seems like it'd be conducive to those species, just enhancing biodiversity in that park.
Okay. So I'm assuming that there'd be conversation with Public Works because they do have space up in athletic.
Oh, definitely. Yes, good point, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
And then I guess the other thing, and this will be the last point, I have in mind the West Side Play area, which is a municipal park. And we have a collaborative project with, is my understanding, with the folks who are developing that project. Do they figure it all in the Parks, Trails and Greenways plan?
Well, I mean, they definitely, one of the advocates for the proposed project there sits on the Parks and Trails Committee. So we do get updates every once in a while. There's not a lot to update right now. Unfortunately, they're still in the process of fundraising. I think it's sort of moved into the realm of staff once fundraising is the amount of money that they're hoping to raise is raised. But yes, I mean, definitely staff, really utilizes the expertise on committees as well. So if it was relevant, that topic would be brought up too, if there was help needed or, definitely relaying any new information. Yeah, staff would bring that forward to a council agenda, or I'm sorry, a Parks and Trails Committee agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We did help getting the whole thing going,
I'm just concerned it's 18 months later. And I remember those very enthusiastic young women coming to council and having an unrealistic time frame of a couple of months to get it happen. But sometimes
a lot of money.
folks need a hand. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a fundraising challenge too.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't help during COVID. Bonnie, did you say that Veterans Park, you're going to take the poles down for the loggers?
No,
Okay,
didn't
good.
say that. No, just looking at some enhancements,
Yeah.
biodiversity enhancements there.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
So I'm happy to make the motion.
Yeah, go ahead, Sue.
Okay, just that council approve the 2022 Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee work plan as amended at this meeting, if we amended it. I don't think we did.
Yeah, I think you're going to change.
Oh yeah, that's right. We did. Yeah, thank you. Yes, so I move that. I think I saw Rob.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thanks, Rob. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye. Terrific. Thank you very much. And we're going to write down a new business. And the first one is 11.1 CAO update. Liam Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor Ander. I have two brief updates, and one is regarding Mount Gardner and our council resolution to try to secure non-motorized recreational use of Mount Gardner trails. And we did get a letter from the province, from the Assistant Deputy Minister at Forest Lands Natural Resource Operations, that effectively mirrored the letter that we received from the statutory decision maker Robert van der Zam, that had similar language around the intent to ensure that there would be a collaborative use of the recreation site, and that sounded like that there would still be motorized use on the site. And however, since that letter, just last week, I had a follow-up call with the director of Rec Sites and Trails BC from the ministry. And so this fellow is responsible for the entire province Rec Sites and Trails group. And it was a very encouraging call where he informed me that they will be applying their very limited resources to this file to help develop a path forward that is in alignment with the direction that council is seeking. He didn't say expressly that it would result in non-motorized use, but rather that in the entire Rec Sites and Trails group, they have a lot of more program and tactical staff that operate on a day-to-day basis throughout the different regions in the province. And then they have a limited number of staff that are more around policy decision-making and community engagement. And so they've allocated a very seasoned staff to the file, who's also worked on very contentious issues up in the northeast of the province with caribou and other contentious rec site issues. So that was really encouraging to know that we've got some dedicated staff from the ministry that are experts in this type of work and this type of engagement and plan development. And so they'll be reaching out to us, this week or next week to start to, develop the plan collaboratively with us, and then to formulate how we will go forward with the outreach to the other stakeholders and users. And we want to be transparent and welcoming in the process, at the same time recognizing that in order for the process to be effective, we can't have everybody at the table. And so we're also continuing to have communications with the key stakeholders too. So to me, it was quite encouraging after getting that letter from the Assistant Deputy Minister. And so we'll keep you informed and come back to you when we have more details about how that process will unfold. The other update that I wanted to just bring to your attention, which I'm sure you already know, but it's just a friendly reminder that tomorrow we have an exciting event of a land blessing ceremony for the community center lands. And it's not so much about the project in and of itself, but also just about recognizing the land that the project will be built upon. And we're very grateful that we have Squamish Nation representatives showing up to conduct the blessing, and all sorts of great other key individuals that have been fundamental to making this project become a reality. So looking forward to it. And I know some of you can't attend, but our thoughts will be with you during that ceremony. So thanks. And that's all for me.
Thank you, Liam. And we'll move on to update to council on Metro Vancouver business. Metro Vancouver Director David Hawking.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. But I did have a question for Liam on that.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So Liam, this staff person will be reaching out to us soon. I'm not sure who us is. Is us?
Oh, the municipality. So from the ministry's point of view, they want the municipality to be the primary point of contact and to be the primary coordinator with the community.
Good. Thank you very much, Liam.
Thanks,
So
David.
Gary, is Metro Vancouver next, or is that issue I wanted to raise about the ferry and students?
I think we're going to take that down to 11.6, David.
Okay, fine, thanks. So on Metro Vancouver, a couple of things. One is there was a board resolution that the leadership group of Metro Vancouver would all have to demonstrate that they've been vaccinated in order to go to any kind of a meeting, anything in person. And so the leadership group includes all board members and senior staff. I'm not sure what level of senior staff. Anyway, so that has been done. And just to inform folks that that's how Metro Vancouver is handling that issue.
The same with committee members too, David? I think so, eh?
Yes, committee members as well. That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. For anyone, but it's, if you're doing meetings through Zoom, obviously, or it's a different matter. But any in-person sort of situation, whether it's a meeting or committee meeting, whatever it might be. A couple of interesting things in the Climate Action Committee meeting, every year there's some really interesting presentations. There's a fund where a couple of $1 million can be spent every year on sustainability innovation projects. And so staff, dig into their brains and come up with some really good ideas. And I'm just going to tell you about 3 of them that I think are kind of really quite interesting. One is to do with you'll know that there's the sewage treatment plant at Iona Island. It's in low land, and with king tides and sea level rise, there's issues around wave action and so on. And so looking at sort of a very unusual, guess you could call it a green shores type of approach, where it's developing a substance that they call bio-rock, which has been done in other parts of the world. And it's where you actually put a sort of a grid of metal into the ocean in sort of a shallowish area, and put a very light electric current through it. It quickly gets calcium carbonate. It makes it like a reef substance that provides shoreline protection, obviously dampening waves. It sequesters carbon. It pulls carbon out of the water, and it creates fantastic habitat. Very, very quickly, within about 6 or 8 months. It's so this is sort of phase 1 of that project. So if it goes well there, that will really be quite an interesting way to handle some of the sea level rise issues, rather than going into hardening, which we know can cause some problems. Here's another one. So this is a presentation by Parks, Metro Vancouver Parks, on alternative powered operations, everything from from chainsaws to those leaf blowers and all the kind of equipment that parks users have to switch to electric. And there was Mike Redpath gave a presentation on the kind of pollution you get from some of these 2-cycle motors. It is it's worse than a whole lot of big pickup trucks. It's really quite amazing, the amount of pollution, and also of course the noise. And so they'll be doing sort of a show and tell kind of thing, where they're bringing in suppliers who have all the best electric equipment, and bringing in all the municipalities, all the park folks who use and work on parks around the region, to see if we can encourage people to move to things electric rather than 2-cycle motors for these various machines. And a third one is one of the issues around reducing emissions from transportation is big trucks. A big, electrification is fine for cars, but for big trucks, it's not working that well. And so there's some developments possibly using hydrogen. So they were developing a plan with, which they call taking out the trash. And it's transitioning to zero carbon heavy duty vehicles through waste collection trucks. And so basically they're looking at, well, where do municipalities have trucks that they could start a process of using new trucks and seeing how they could work, seeing how heavy trucks could work. So piloting heavy trucks in garbage collection. And so they'll be working with the municipalities across the region to pull some people together, look at some of the best technologies and see whether they can be applied to garbage collection, and perhaps that can be a bridge into other heavy truck use. So those are 3 of these projects, which there were about 10 of them, 12 of them. And you know, if you want to look at read the reports, they're really quite interesting. A lot of them address climate change and transportation, but those are just 3 of the highlights. So those are 3 that I thought I would mention that could possibly apply to Bowen.
Great, thank you, David. Those are really interesting. It's amazing what you can do when you think about it for a while, eh?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to the update to council on Island Trust business. Island Trust Municipal Trustees Fass and Kale.
Thank you. You go ahead, Michael.
Happily. This is probably, more will be happening, I think, in 2 weeks' time before the March meeting. On Friday, I attended the meeting of the Trust Programs Committee, and the Trust Programs Committee have been working on the policy statement review. It was extremely interesting. It was quite a lengthy meeting, and at this time, it had quite a lot of public input. And, you know, whilst you can take what you like from public input, because public input always expresses sometimes singular, sometimes a lot of points of view, but the themes coming out on the Island Trust policy statement review, the lightning rod was the thought that there might be an attempt to rush this through. Now that was caused, unfortunately, because the agenda, actually I think quite fairly, had shown a draft sort of what might be in terms of timelines for the policy review. And this sort of ignited a lot of people who thought that the whole process was being rushed. So we had to deal with that. And I think that was taken really, really seriously, because these people pulled no punches at all about what they thought about the trust policy review generally, and what they thought about the trust policy review specifically in terms of having it rushed. So that was one theme that we will see how that plays out. The second theme was you could expect on certain specific docs was one, and there were a couple of others, but you know, to be expected. And I think the one that I sort of most caught me by surprise, that people were actively raising petitions to be signed. And boy, this shows the danger, I think, but not just for Islands Trust, but for us, if we were ever having to do this, of having this process ever getting out into the general public domain before ready. Extremely difficult, and it has people commenting on drafts. You know, drafts are something that we all work through. It's sequential. You start with something, and you start with draft 1, and it goes to draft 2, draft 3, etc. So I would say the review of the trust policy statement, to say the least, has been somewhat fraught. And it's done in the background, of course. Trustees have now the confidential report from the management consultants. And that is the report that's going to be discussed at the March meeting and then made public. And hopefully there will be, as part of that March meeting, will be an opportunity for trustees to quiz and question the consultants who did the report. And as part of the steering committee, which I am, very much hope this will be an open, not a closed meeting, time to tell. And the other thing is that the survey has been done on the budget. And as Councillor Stuckfast sits on the Finance Committee, I'll let her discuss that or report back on that. I have not had a chance, being where I am, to go through the figures in sufficient detail. I've been working a little bit off comments and charts on Facebook, etc., which have been numerous. And you know, let me go to the source, please, rather than that. So you know, so Ellen Fast, please feel free to comment on that, because you're a member of the finance group. Certainly more to follow, and there is going to be a very considerable amount around the March meetings, because this budget will be significant. So I'll be happy to answer any questions in as much as that I've got, and I can. What I cannot comment, though, is the consultant's report. That is confidential to the trustees at the moment, and then it will be made public around about, I think, March 7th, 8th and 9th, if I've got that timing right. So at this point, a lot more to follow. I'm very happy to hand over to my Islands Trust colleague at this point.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And go ahead, Sue Ellen, and then if there's any questions from Michael or Sue Ellen, go back.
I'll just follow up briefly with Trust Council will be held in Nanaimo. It's scheduled for an in-person meeting March 8th to 10th. And so that's coming up in a couple of weeks, as Michael said. The big things on the agenda are governance review, the trust policy statement, next phase of consultation. You'll remember some of you came to September 2019, remember back before COVID, we had a session at the library, right? So it's not like it has been super rushed, but that's more and more people get interested, and that's great. We get their input, and looking forward to finding out more from the consultants about the review report, and which looks terrific. In our agenda there, you can see 12.2 is about the budget. 12.3, I think, is about the telephone poll that is not being done by the Islands Trust, but sometimes people have been asking the Islands Trust, why are you polling us again? It's not us at the Islands Trust. And then I just wanted to mention the groundwater licensing webinar that was last week. So I know there were Bowen Islanders who participated in that. That was great. And 12.8 in the agenda, a little bit separated. That's the, it's an example of how the Islands Trust is working with San Juan County, our partners across the international border, who are also island dwellers. And we're asking together again for a big tugboat that could help vessels in distress, particularly between Vancouver Island and the Port of Vancouver, to limit oil spills and things like that. And with the increased amount of shipping coming up, and with the Trans Mountain Pipeline on the perhaps coming. And anyway, those are some examples. Happy to answer any questions. I've got Financial Planning Committee Wednesday after Executive Committee has a teleconference, so I can take any questions.
All right, anybody have any questions? All right, okay.
Probably more than you wanted. Okay.
And okay, so we'll move on. Thank you, guys. And we'll move on to update the Council on Metro Vancouver Regional Parks Committee meetings. Councillor Nicholson, go ahead, Maureen.
I requested that our agenda be included in your package, so you can take a look at the complete agenda, and I'll just draw your attention to two things. One is in the manager's report. There's again a mention of the Crippen-Dorman planning process. They are proceeding. I also circulated to council a short note about they've accommodated a request from Bowen Heritage to enable them to move out at a more comfortable pace and not in the rain. And then the second point is just to encourage you to take a look at the schedule that's in the manager's report. It's quite interesting in terms of the range of things that are underway in Metro. It's at times rather daunting. And then finally, and this is not parks related, but David and I attended a large Zoom meeting on the Iona wastewater treatment plant. It was a joint meeting of, who was it? It was the directors and also the parks committee.
It was mostly the GVS and DD directors. And then you, because of the Parks Committee, I was annoyed because I didn't get invited to the meeting. So I had to get them specially to let me in because I'm on Climate Action Committee and that wasn't invited for some reason. But anyway.
It was very interesting, and it sort of came on the heels of some of our sewer issues. And this is a massive project where they're dealing with the updating, the replacement of a facility that they quoted variously serves 40 or 60%. I don't know where it actually landed, but it hasn't been significantly upgraded in over 60 years. And it puts some things into perspective. Anyway, it was very interesting and gave us some context. Yeah. So that's my report. Short.
I'll just add a little bit to that. I mean, there's a whole section on the treatment plant itself, but one of the really interesting things as well is the work they're doing on enhancing the salmon habitat because they've been sort of cut off, and so because they're moving things around and digging things up, they're able to open passageways for salmon that have been closed, and it's really quite remarkable what they're able to do from salmon habitat perspective. It's really quite wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. That's being what the Parks Committee has kind of been focusing on, the habitat restoration aspect and keeping the park as intact as possible. And it's sort of been a series of drip presentations over the last couple of years. But I must say that the GBS and DD and the folks in attendance were being very, very cautious. And there must have been 15 different consultants from this, that, and the other. It was quite an array of expert presentations.
I'll add a little bit there too, if I may. It's what's happened. We've all heard about how the North Shore treatment plant has gone over budget. Basically, you get a big international company that gives a lowball estimate and then says, "Oh, things have changed. We need to pile on more and more and more." And the same thing happened with the twin tunnels between the Cap and the Seymour Reservoir. And so what Metro has done has got basically an international committee. They've organized things in several different ways, but they have an international committee of experts to review everything about the plan to make sure that when it gets put out to bids, that every dot and every I is dotted and so on. Yeah. So absolutely careful that there's no way someone could come in with stink bids and try to,
So it costs you a lot less money in the long run, eh?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's great. Thank you, guys. And we'll move on to update the council on TransLink Mayor's Council meetings. Councillor Alison Morse. There you go.
Had to click firmly on the mic. Well, the big event was the January 27th. It was a joint meeting of the TransLink Mayor's Council and the TransLink Board, and we went through the final version of the Metro 2050 plan, or not Metro 2050, Transport 2050 plan, and separate resolutions for each body. And we did a roll call vote for the Mayor's Council, and so Transport 2050 has been adopted, and the actual published, I got a printed version, but it's not quite the final draft, so I don't want to just leave it sitting on the front counter because there are a few things that got changed in it. Anyhow, the thing is about yay thick, size of a telephone book. So it's a little light bedtime reading. So it has been approved, but now the fun is going to begin to actually decide what, which routes and what in the, and so we had a bit of an update on what's called the investment plan and going forward in the new quote, mayor's vision. And so that's the fun part that's now going to start. And the other thing was, so now I can't read my handwriting, talking about conversion to electric vehicles and greenhouse gas reduction targets and everything. And there were some very interesting statistics. It's going to be really hard with, even with light duty vehicles to get to meet the targets of having the certain number, because there's a whole bunch of them that are, will still be on the road 20 years from now or 30 years from now. So it's very ambitious, and it's going to be hard to meet without people actually switching their mode of travel. So then the other was just something else I attended last week, which was the Oceans Protection Plan review and process. And that was an interesting format. It was Tuesday morning to Friday morning for 3 hours every morning, or 2.5. So it was very interesting, and lots of absolutely fascinating presentations. Did you know that oil naturally percolates up from the bottom of the seabed? There was an excellent scientist from Ottawa that presented on that. And then there was lots of good statistics on a whole new geographical positioning, tracking systems and everything that they're working on. And it's 5 years since that was announced, and they all hinted at it's going to be carrying on and there's going to be things coming. But of course, we haven't had the federal budget yet. So none of that, nobody got into concrete, this is what we're going to do. But there was lots of hints that there'll certainly be an Oceans Protection Plan phase 2. So,
all right.
That's it.
All right. Thank you, Allison. And David, back to you with your little add-on, your addition there.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. So we had the Transportation Advisory Committee, BIMTAC, met last week, and there were a couple of delegations, and they were both on the same topic. And they're from parents, basically, and a fellow who was also a teacher, a principal of another school in North Van. And there's real problems with the linkage between BC Ferry schedules, transit and bus schedules, and the schedules of the schools that leave students missing ferries or spending an hour in Horseshoe Bay because there's no proper connection, or doing things like a large number of students having to rush and somehow figure out how to get onto a bus that will only accommodate about half of them. So sort of negotiate as to who gets on the bus. It's just a lack of coordination between the three bodies. So in BIMTAC's, in our transportation plan, coordinating schedules is one of our items. And so we asked the two petitioners to send a detailed email to Natasha so that she would have the proper information. Okay, what buses, what days, what times, and all that sort of stuff. And Natasha's meeting with them. I think it's a little bit later this week. I think Wednesday. I'm not sure. And then what we would be trying to do, is what we have done in the past, is try to get all three bodies together and see if we can find something that works for these kids, so they're not left wasting a whole lot of their day, or left unsupervised for a long portion of time, or just in completely inappropriate situations. So that's just sort of a bit of information. That the coordinating schedules is something that with our previous planner, we used to do quite a bit of work on, but then when the 257 moved to every 20 minutes, and then when COVID happened, there was less moving around, and that's sort of been in abeyance for a couple of years. So we'll have to sort of spend a little time to find the right contacts and pull all that together and try to sort this situation out for these students. So that's just an update on work that will be going on, in case you hear that same concern from some council members here, from some other parents.
All right. Thank you, David. That's
David, we're not talking about the kids going to Rockridge then. It's more kids going to the other school?
It's both, Allison. It's
both. Okay.
What happens at Rockridge is, in their schedule, and perhaps this is for COVID reasons, on some days, some kids only work half a day.
Yeah.
There's no way for them to get, so on,
Wow. Not a good situation. A lot of those going on these days.
We need to get back to school.
Thank you. Sorry, Allison, what?
need to get back to normal school schedules where they go for the whole day.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right too. So we're going to move on to a closed council meeting, and the recommendation is the council move to a closed council meeting immediately following the regular council meeting to discuss items pursuant to section 90-1 A and K of the community charter. I'll move that. So I need a second. Great, thanks, Michael, and all in favor, aye. Okay, thank you. Go through the information items. We've had a look at some of those. And there is probably nobody for question period. I think everybody's bailed on us there. And if not, I will call this meeting adjourned. Now, we had it at 8:15. That closed meeting was supposed to start at 8 o'clock. It's now 8:35. Can we just take a 5-minute break so we don't, we got quite a bit to do in the closed